as a public speaking coach, and a lot of the public speaking books you're probably familiar with, they speak a lot about the tactics and the tips and the tricks and, stories, using stories and storytelling, but not a lot of them were referring to what I was hearing from these people. And what they were saying to me essentially was that they are their own worst enemy. When I asked them, so what's holding you back? Why aren't you just getting on video? Why aren't you just recording yourself and creating video content, putting yourself out there? They essentially told me, because I am afraid. And when I really asked them these questions, like, what are you afraid of? So they were afraid of judgment. They were afraid of rejection. They were afraid of being visible. They were afraid of putting themselves out there and opening themselves up to scrutiny from their peers.
Hey there, and welcome to yet another episode of the World of Presentations podcast, brought to you by us at 356 Labs. Every single time when I say this, it makes me laugh for some reason. Probably it's because this episode is the 109th episode. So my name is Boris. I'm the founder of 356 Labs, the company that brings this podcast to life. And today, together with me, we have a guest from our industry. Her name is, let me be very careful here. Bronya, stay with me on this one. Bronya Spitzer. Am I correct? Yeah, all right. Brilliant. And currently she's based in Tel Aviv.
Right.
But she's now moving to Florida. I was about to say Orlando, Florida, but I don't think it's Orlando. So she's moving to Florida. She's going to tell us where exactly she's going to be now. Bronya is a public speaking coach, again, currently based in Tel Aviv, but moving in a month to Florida and to the US. And she delivers highly customized one-on-one coaching sessions and runs something that's an 8-week on-camera public speaking program called, and I wrote that down, the Badass Speaker Accelerator. All right, everyone. Bronya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Well done. You got the name right. You got the details right. Fantastic. Yes, thanks so much for having me.
The name was a little bit tricky. The name was a little bit tricky, but otherwise everything is great. Bronya, when are you moving to Florida? And where exactly are you going to be?
Okay, so for all the listeners and the viewers out there, this is a very important information. I'll be moving in July, mid-July, and we'll be moving to the sunshine town of Boca Raton. That's where I will be based.
Brilliant. So now tell us a little bit more about how did you end up in the presentation industry and being a public speaking coach. What happened?
Okay, so in order to understand how I ended up creating and developing the program, I have to take you back really to my first day at my first job back when, and not a lot of people know this about me, especially in my professional world, is that I'm actually a lawyer. And so,
Right.
There I was, going to my new job in my sharp suit and my high heels and wearing makeup, and I'm walking to the skyscraper in town, and I'm riding up the elevator to the 44th floor, and I'm walking into the beautiful offices of this beautiful building, and these are the offices of a very large, important public company. And there I am. It's my first day of my job, and about to start working as a lawyer in the legal department. And I'm really, really excited. I'm fresh out of law school. It's literally my first job. And I'm sitting at my new desk and my phone rings and I pick it up and it's my new boss. And she says, Bronya. I said, yes. My heart is racing. And she says, there is a board meeting right now in progress. I want you to pick up your things. You're going in there and you're going to take the board minutes. And so, of course, I want to oblige and I'm very excited. And I say, yes, of course. And I pick up my bags, and inside I am absolutely freaking out because I have no idea what board minutes are. I have never been to a board meeting and I absolutely do not know what to do. And so a very nice and sweet co-worker took pity on me. She walks me to the boardroom, which I do not even know where it's located. And she gives me literally a 10-second rundown of what it is that I'm supposed to do. She says, just sit there, listen to every single word that's said, and write down everything that you hear. Simple. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Yep. So open the door, I walk in, and there is a big, large room, big round table, and around the table sitting many serious men in suits. And that was my first board meeting. One of the people, they gestured that I should sit down in a chair, and then I start tapping away. And just to be clear what board minutes are, okay, board minutes is basically a compulsory document that every public company needs to have, which is basically a record of the actions and the decisions of the board members, okay? And was my job as the lawyer to take down everything that's been said, and this serves as a legal document, and in the event that the company is sued, this is evidence for all intents and purposes. So absolutely no pressure. And there I go, and I'm tapping away. And basically, this ends up being a very primary and central part of my job. And I literally, over the years, ended up spending hundreds of hours, not exaggerating, in board meetings, transcribing and getting the front row seat to the best show in town. Because literally, I have seen it all when it comes to board meetings and presentations. I began to literally inherently understand the difference of what makes a snooze fest of a presentation and what makes a presentation magnetic and can convince the board and make everyone listen. And so there I was in my job, and slowly, over time, I began to realize that I had no business being a lawyer, and that law was making my soul slowly die inside. And I was very, very unhappy, and I was very miserable. But I found that the part that I really most looked forward to during, the week was those meetings, was the times that I would go and sit and literally sit in the front row of a really good show, because I love the communications aspect, and I love the dynamics and the power plays, and getting to see the different styles of communication and presentation. And it's there in my head, I believe, even before I knew what I was doing, that I was developing kind of a process and a formula for really getting that presentation right. But as I mentioned, I was very, very unhappy. And so all the time I was looking for ways to express myself in a creative way and looking for an outlet. So in the evenings, I signed up to a television course where I learned how to be a television presenter and reporter. And I would go there in the evenings, and after work, I would go finish early some days, and so I got a little bit of experience on TV, and I produced and presented an article for TV that was live. And I absolutely loved it. I felt like I was coming alive, and I, got to use and implement all those presentation skills that I watched. And then I went on to learn radio, and got a little bit experience on radio and radio presenting and hosting. And finally, I took the lunge, and I left my really safe and comfortable and smart job as a lawyer, and I went to work in a TV station. And I'm going to cut a very long story short, but the short version of it was that I understood that a TV environment, TV station wasn't exactly in the environment that I wanted to work in. And we kind of called it, that chapter ended pretty fast. And there I was at home, unemployed. I had left, this career that I had spent so many years trying to attain. And I didn't know, what did I want to do? What now? And so I had one day an epiphany, and I said, I want to become a public speaking coach. I'm just going to, it all kind of, the dots kind of connected. My love for communication, my experience in boardrooms and board meetings and presenting and TV and radio, and my love of people. And it kind of all just fit together. And I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And so I said, okay, how do I go about doing that? And so I went along, I was very easily sold to, and I bought into a course creating program where I was taught how to create my own program. And now the first thing that they tell you to do is market research, obviously. And so that's what I did. For the next month, I interviewed over 50, pretty close to 60 people about their public speaking struggles. Okay, because I actually wanted to hear from people who are struggling with this. What is it that they're actually struggling with, and what is it that they need? And so I threw it out there social media. I said I didn't give any details. I just wrote on my social media channels. I'm in the process of creating something, developing something. If you are struggling with if you're someone who struggles with public speaking, I'd like to interview you. And so many people reached out. And I had interviews, 4 interviews a day, and I would talk to them and I would ask them questions and I would write down everything they say. And in my head, I had this idea that I was going to leverage my experience in the corporate world and kind of coach corporate people. And that was kind of the thing that I thought I was going to do. But the people that were raising their hands and saying, "Oh, I need your help," were not actually the corporate people. It was actually entrepreneurs, coaches, and service-based entrepreneurs who were very experienced and were very knowledgeable and worked very hard, but they were missing that special ingredient, which is putting themselves out there on video, which is something that they felt was missing from really standing out in a really saturated market, where they can actually be the face and voice of their brand, and they felt that their inability to do so was holding them back. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute, like that is not what I initially thought I was going to do. But as someone who was talking to people, I said to myself, I'm going to listen to the need and I'm going to develop something that they want. And so that is the long short version of how the Badass Speaker Accelerator came into life.
So what happened then? Like, you interviewed so many people. What are the top 3 issues or what are the top 3 things that they're pointing to? Having in mind that in our audience we have entrepreneurs and people from, people that run organizations. What are you hearing from them? And like, if we have to nail it down to the top 3, and respectively, what is the solution to each one of those? Like, what do you think?
Okay, so it was actually very interesting because, as a public speaking coach, and a lot of the public speaking books you're probably familiar with, they speak a lot about the tactics and the tips and the tricks and, stories, using stories and storytelling, but not a lot of them were referring to what I was hearing from these people. And what they were saying to me essentially was that they are their own worst enemy. When I asked them, so what's holding you back? Why aren't you just getting on video? Why aren't you just recording yourself and creating video content, putting yourself out there? They essentially told me, because I am afraid. And when I really asked them these questions, like, what are you afraid of? So they were afraid of judgment. They were afraid of rejection. They were afraid of being visible. They were afraid of putting themselves out there and opening themselves up to scrutiny from their peers. A lot of them, the people that I was speaking to, there are people just like me. There were people in the corporate world who felt like they had to do something else, like their soul was dying, that they wanted to do their own thing. And the fact and putting themselves out there was the scariest thing that they could do, because suddenly they have this persona, and I could very much relate to that as someone who is a lawyer. They have this very serious kind of persona and demeanor, and they talk about very serious things, and suddenly to put yourself out there on social media and to be so exposed and vulnerable and talking about public speaking or about social media, talking about whatever it is that they want to talk about, they felt suddenly silly that perhaps people would laugh at them. And what would their coworkers think? What would their bosses think? What would their friends say, or their family? And so that was a real big thing that came up. And the more we dug into it, the more we concluded that these voices that they're articulating are coming from within. These are their own, this is their inner critic. And that is basically the foundation of the work that I do with people. It's focusing on the confidence and mindset aspect. And we do a lot of work in that area. So that's the main primary one. The second
Tell us a little bit more about how do you focus. Let's go with this one a little. Like, what is the work that you do with those guys? Because I think that everyone here who is listening or watching this one will associate with, and what you just said to resonate with them. This inner critic is with everyone,
Yeah.
and the more high stakes the moment and the presentation is, the more it talks to you, right? So what is, let's say, one thing that the audience can do or can try to kind of make that that inner critic just disappear, or at least not be as noisy or as loud as it could be?
Okay, yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I have to relate to one of the words you said, is that make the inner critic disappear. And that's a big mistake that people think, because the inner critic is there to stay. It's not going to disappear. And our job is to manage it and to navigate it. Now, one of the most powerful and empowering things that we could do in order to manage our inner critic is to separate it from ourselves, is to separate it from us. And it's easier said than done. But once, think about all the times where we do lots of exercises, but essentially I get them to think about the times where we've heard these voices, where the voice says, no, 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 don't do it. Don't say this. It's already been said, or no one will listen, or these things these thoughts that race in our minds. Once we are aware of these thoughts, that is the first step, awareness of it. Okay, I hear these thoughts. These thoughts are not me. And then we go into a process of making a persona out of this inner critic. We separate it from ourselves, we give it a name, and we say, okay, I hear my inner critic. Thank you, inner critic. Because the job of the inner critic, it's just to keep me safe, because it's terrified that I'm going to embarrass myself and I'm being highly visible, and it just wants to keep me safe. And so we really go into the process of saying, okay, that inner critic, how does it sound? What kind of voice does it have? Does it have a male voice? Does it have a female voice? Okay, so it has a female voice, and I'm talking about myself. All right, who is saying it? How does she look? And I'm imagining the person who's saying these words of, oh, Bronya, just try cancel the podcast because, maybe you'll make a mistake. Maybe you'll look silly. Maybe, oh, it's a woman. She's an old woman, and she's grey. She's dressed in grey, and she lives in this house, and she's looking out the window, and she says, all these people are doing unsafe things. Just stay in your house. Don't go out. And the second I personify this voice, it suddenly becomes humorous. And I say, okay, and I gave her a name, like, what is she? And you call her, whatever it is you want to call her or him. I said, oh, Mildred, thank you for looking after me, but it's okay. I got this. Like, I'm okay. You can go back. You can chill, and that is a really powerful thing, because the second, you can separate these voices. So that's not me. That is a voice. You have a job. You're keeping me safe. Thank you for that. I got this. And then you feel the power of it minimizing. And that's really, really powerful.
All right, interesting. That is the first time I'm hearing someone personify the inner critic inside of themselves. But yeah, that is an interesting one for sure. For sure. What about the second one? You were about to say the second thing that you found with the entrepreneurs that you interviewed. What was the second thing that you found out from those interviews?
I'll get to that in a second. I just want to add about the inner critic. A lot of times people think that if they ignore it or suppress it or be mean to it or shout at like this voice, it will go away. But, I try to say that is not the right way about it, because it's like a little child, heaven forbid we should smack a child or do something, it's not going to help the child. It will only make them come back louder, stronger, more troubled, right? So the trick is the compassion, the self-compassion, to be kind to yourself. All right, so the second one is being terrified of the camera, because a lot of people, they love that one-on-one. They love speaking to people, and they get that energy from people in a room, and they feed off that energy. And suddenly when they're speaking to a camera, it's such a sterile experience, especially not like we're doing now, where I can see you, you're not here in this room, but I can see your face and your expression. So it's easy for me to communicate. But when they're recording a video by themselves in a room, looking down the lens, it's a very paralyzing experience for some people, and they feel really unnatural. So that is a really big one. And now you want to know what we should do. Yeah.
What do you advise them?
So obviously there's a lot of things that go into it, but the main the main kind of thing that we need to overcome is really becoming best friends with the camera and understanding that the lens is the eye of the audience. And a lot of times, if we, apropos personifying something, the people who really feel locked, kind of really tense in front of the camera, I encourage them kind of to put a picture of someone that they like or love next to the lens of the camera or just above it, and pretend they're speaking to their friend and look at that picture. And if it makes you smile, someone that you like, a daughter, a friend, a mother, or a sister, you smile and you really pretend like you're talking to that person. It's obviously something that is developed over time with practice, but looking at someone helps you imagine the person that's on the other end of the camera watching you.
Yeah, I think it just requires, as you mentioned, practice until you make it a habit. Because even for me, it was not natural to start looking at the camera when we converted into this online only world. Everyone was used to looking at the screen because this is where people were. But when you look at the screen, for the other side, as you mentioned, the camera and the lens of the camera is the eye of the audience. So is the eyes of the audience, is you're missing the eye contact. And when there is no eye contact, we also teach our students that, hey, every single client that we work with, especially in the corporate world, they themselves say that trust is mandatory if they try to and if they want to move an audience from point A to point B. But in the in-person reality, trust was built when you have eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things that builds trust is, hey, are you looking at everyone in that room or in that expo hall or whatever it is? Then why are we not doing this online? What's going on? And why is your audience feeling disconnected? Right? One of the reasons was because everyone is looking at the screen and not at the lens of the camera. Any other? Let's go with number 3. Do you have one more here?
Yeah.
So far, the inner critic, the problem with the camera, and what's the third one?
The third one is not understanding the medium of video content and not understanding the pace of it, the fast pace. And a lot of times when people are creating video content, they don't understand the micro attention span of the usually social media, which where they create the video content, the social media consumer. And it's literally seconds where they decide to watch what you're going to say. And so you have such a tiny amount of time to hook them and draw them in. And so very often I see people and I say, why? And they start and they saying, hello, everyone. How are you? How's your day? So I just wanted to tell you, and then they get into it. Think about how many seconds passed since I told you that, right? In social media standards, that's an eternity. I don't know if you're familiar with Instagram, but there's, stories. So each story is 15 seconds. A lot for 15 seconds is a long time. People don't even have patience to watch 15 seconds. And so every millisecond of that is crucial. And so that is one of the things that I really teach them to capitalize on, the small attention span, and to go right into the hook.
Understood. So that one for sure, I think this is it is so relevant, especially you coming and you going there from the online only perspective. It is, to me, it is unbelievable. I was in December, I went to Barcelona for the biggest conference. It was actually an expo for events, so you can find every country on the planet presenting their hotels, presenting their countries, and where you can do an event in that country. And this was my first my first experience coming out of the COVID thing and online only, right? With our customers, events, conferences, obviously our conference itself, then going to an in-person event again. And when the people join, like when we were seeing the audience going back for sessions, when the speaker went on stage, the only thing that I was doing is to navigate, to monitor how was the audience reacting to that speaker, and whether or not they were engaging with her or with him or with them. and the speed that you can see them disconnecting with nowadays is scary to watch, right? It is just scary to see, because this thing is now applicable to every speaker, not just the person that I saw there, but also to me, to you, to absolutely everyone. Probably because they came from the online world where everything was just a click away. Now, when the speaker is not engaging for like 10 seconds, it's over. They open their laptop, they check their emails and do everything else but listen. It is crazy how much we need to adapt, and how much better, I would say, we need to become as presenters, speakers, whatever we may want to call ourselves, right? All right. So let's go with one more here. You are a public speaking coach, obviously, and you do that for a living now. For how long is it already?
So I'm pretty new. I mean, not long, but like since 2020, 2021. So that's like, I'm pretty new in business. Like I'm still
Okay.
evolving and developing and, formulating my niche and who I want to work with. So yeah, so less kind of established, I'd say.
Yeah, okay, but still 2 years is two
Hmm.
years are 2 years.
Yeah.
So what is the one thing that you would point to for entrepreneurs, or and not only, why would someone want to get and work with a coach? What would change? What is the importance? How much more can they extract, let's say, for their public speaking or presentation skills when they work with someone?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really fantastic question. And I have a twofold answer. Because yeah, I always say, there's lots of books out there, there's lots of resources and materials, tons on the internet for public speaking, but I always say trying to learn good public speaking from reading a book is like passing the theory test of driving and then thinking you can go and drive a car. Okay, it doesn't work like that, because
Yep.
public speaking is all about the implementation. And as a coach, that is something that we can facilitate and we can provide. Now, the thing about public speaking is that it's not information that you can go and learn and it's in your head and then you know it. It has to go through your head. You need to create and form those new neural pathways, and you have to implement, you have to apply it. Otherwise, it's just information and that's it. It will just stay information that you know about public speaking, and you will not become a better public speaker. And that's something that's really important, because it's also, it's not a fun thing to do, because it requires you to step out of your comfort zone and do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, right? Because it's scary to step in front of a crowd and speak. It's uncomfortable, and so people on their own perhaps will not willingly subject themselves to this discomfort. And so the coach is there to provide that accountability, to provide that support, a framework as well, in order for them to do it in a safe environment and with the appropriate feedback. That's number one. Number two, and ties back to the very theme of the things that we were speaking to at the start of the podcast, which is, and this is what I always say, public speaking is an inside game. It's an inside job. And I'm speaking about those of the people that are listening out there that look at public speaking as something that only other people do, because they feel that it's something that either you're born with or you're not. And they feel that,
Hmm.
there's all these people and they're super confident and they do the public speaking jobs, and they feel this sense of frustration inside them because they listen, they go to these conventions, all these professional conventions, and they listen to the person on stage and they say, hey, I know that, I know this stuff, but they feel that they can't do that. And that is the confidence and mindset work that I, as a coach at least, work very, very deeply with my clients, because very often the person is their own worst enemy, and the obstacles that they have to overcome, it's all in here. It's the mindset. And so that's what
Hmm.
I work with my clients. So those are the two main reasons.
Yeah, I would say more than enough. When you think about it, it's more than enough. Bronya, the Badass Speaker Accelerator. Where can people find more about it?
Okay, so I'm a social media recovery, which means I despise social media. And so the main place that you can find me is LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, and you can find me Bronya Spitzer, and I will come up public speaking coach. And you can, don't hesitate, send me a message, and we can chat. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Brilliant. We're going to make sure that we put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes or in the description. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find Bronya there. I would also support what you just said about LinkedIn. We were exchanging messages there quite heavily and extensively,
Yes,
I would say. And
yeah,
we met on LinkedIn first, I would say. I
that's
think
right.
it was
That's right.
LinkedIn that connected us in first place. So
Mm-hmm.
indeed, everyone, Bronny is very responsive on LinkedIn. So reach out to her and find more about what she is doing, what the Badass Speaker Accelerator program is all about, and see what we can do together. I really like the name though. Bronny,
Yeah.
thanks again for joining. This was almost 30 minutes. It's almost 30 minutes, but yeah, thanks so much for doing this one.
No problem. My pleasure. It was so nice to speak to you.